Hello class, my name is Devin Gray and I will be your instructor for A&T 4401. Now I will try to make this sort of syllabus day as quick and painless as possible for you, given that we cannot meet in person to go over it. I am not a fan of sort of forcing students to sit inside of a live Zoom or Microsoft Team meeting. So this class will be primarily administered via PowerPoint such as this, hopefully a little bit more entertaining than this very dry subject. Because anthropology is not a dry subject, at least it can be taught in a way that it's not dry. Let's go with that. So hopefully you enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you all, despite the concessions we're all having to make given the situation with COVID-19 and USF primarily at least being a fully online or at least hybrid mode model that they're using right now in terms of instruction. On that note, this class is entirely online, so you never have to be in a building, at least for my class, and hopefully you can keep contact with other individuals to a minimum, at least for this semester and for the foreseeable future. So let's get into it. So, as I said, my name is Devin Gray, and I am a PhD student in the Department of Anthropology here at USF. Additionally, I am getting what's called a concurrent degree in public health, so I guess my official sort of designation is a PhD slash MPH student. I'm in my third year of the program. Given the nature of taking two different degrees at the graduate level, I'm expected to be here for at least a few more years. But with that being said, I am still very much a student. I may just have more classes under my belt than some of you, as an example. So I'm at least want to be very much cognizant of the fact that people have very different contexts and situations that can shape their ability to, let's say, submit an assignment on a certain due date. Now, these due dates are there for a reason. For the most part, am going to be pretty rigid with them, but if you need some extra flexibility, let's say there's just too much on your plate one day, or you have to go to the doctors, or you need to take care of some family business, that's totally fine. Just let me know, and we can sort of work something out. Ideally, this is not something that is a habitual situation, maybe something that is a last minute development for you, or you're just too stressed out. I want to be flexible to the extent that I think is fair for both you as a student and me as an instructor. So just keep that in mind. And again, I'm your instructor, but I'm also very much aware of the fact that this is a very different context for everybody, including myself. So let's all give each other some flexibility and wiggle room in terms of expectations. I think that should be a rule of thumb for every instructor and every student going into this new semester and this very new context and, in some senses, world that we're walking into, partly blindly. So, with that being said, this class is what's considered to be asynchronous, meaning I'm not going to have you sit at a computer at a certain time of the day every week. I'm going to be primarily administering instruction via PowerPoint such as this. That way you can digest it, take notes on your own time, again, keeping in mind due dates. Because additionally, any information on these PowerPoints, on the readings I assign, on the documentaries I assign, etc., are fair game for the quizzes in this class. There are going to be only 4 quizzes in this class, and there are no exams. So that seems pretty easy, right? Or at least light. Well, the caveat of that is that I am going to primarily focus on your writing in this class, both in terms of trying to improve your writing, as well as giving you a lot of assignments that really make you critically engage with the material via writing. Anthropology is a very writing-intensive discipline, and for good reason, which hopefully you will understand as we're going through the semester, and that also means you will be doing a lot of reading in this class. So expect that your primary time in this class is going to be spent reading and writing, probably primarily reading, hopefully. And I will know you've done a good job with the reading and you've sort of digested and engaged with the material via weekly reflection papers. For the most part, there are going to be 2 of these papers due every week. There's only going to be 1 due the first week of the semester, and it's on just 1 article. And then the following week, I'm pretty sure there's going to be 2 reflection papers on, I think, 4 articles in total. The reading is not supposed to overwhelm you. It's supposed to make you be able to sit down and really think through what the authors are trying to convey, and also what I'm potentially trying to convey to you through assigning these specific readings. These readings are intentional. I didn't just pick them out of a hat. So maybe think through my process as to why I'm assigning you these readings in the order that I am assigning them. As I've taught this class before, one thing that I have heard from students is they appreciated the fact that everything kind of builds on each other. This is a scaffolding class. I'm going to start off with very foundational concepts that someone that maybe isn't even, that already taking anthropology classes are very familiar with. Hopefully I can expand upon or expunge some of the information that you have received and find ways to maybe refine it or take it a different direction if you think you really understand some of the core concepts. So bear with me if you're an anthropology major and this is the end of your undergraduate term essentially, because later on in the semester we're going to get more critical with the material in terms of both our discussions and the quality of the reading, I would say. So you may find familiar readings. This is fine. In anthropology, we often read the same article multiple times because every time you read something, both if it's academic or even fiction as an example, you get something different out of it, or you may have found something that you missed. Since, again, this is primarily a reading and writing discipline, it is very important that we really understand the language that anthropology uses and also other disciplines use, because we also like to steal and borrow from other disciplines all the time, to be able to inform our own perspective. So going off on that tangent, basically all I'm trying to say is that this class is reading and writing intensive, but there's no exam, so yay to that, I'm sure. And only 4 quizzes that are relatively short. They're basically just there for metrics and to make sure that I see that you all are getting the material based on what I want you to get out of it, which I hopefully will also see in your reflection papers and your other work throughout the semester. Finally, this class does not have specific office hours. Instead, I am basically making myself available to you whenever you have a good time available for you. Again, I'm trying to be flexible here, so if you ever, let's say, wanted to sit down and chat with me via Microsoft Teams or Zoom, or it could be 5 minutes, it could be an hour, that's totally fine. I also am taking classes, so I, again, understand that you sometimes need to just find a spot that fits, and it's not going to be the same for everybody, so it's not fair for me to assign office hours at a certain time. However, if I get some responses that students would like to have a sort of set office hour time slot, we can do that as well. I just found that for the most part, when you do online office hours, you maybe only get 1 or 2 students over the course of an hour that are usually only there for about a couple minutes. So it really doesn't seem conducive for your information or education and time for me to have a certain time slot, because it doesn't seem it gets used a lot, essentially. So hopefully that makes sense, and I will try to be quicker with my ramblings as we go throughout the rest of the PowerPoint. All right, bear with me a second. This course will explore contemporary issues and inequalities in American life related to cross-cultural diversity, that's the key term here, from a holistic perspective, and teach students tools to address them. Additionally, students will learn how identity is socially constructed and apply key anthropological approaches and concepts, including cultural relativism, which is the big one, to their lives. Basically, what that is trying to say is that this class takes a holistic perspective, which we'll get into very soon. Basically, what that means is that I like to take this class from different angles and approach the topic from different perspectives that all kind of build towards a more clearer picture of reality in a sense. This is best seen through the concept of intersectionality. So, for instance, how different life experiences and your own physical appearance, for instance, can shape how people interact with you or how they expect you to behave and how they behave in relation to you. This is a holistic perspective. It takes different concepts and builds them towards a greater whole, essentially. In the case of a person, your life experiences have shaped your perspective concerning a variety of different topics, and that sort of uniqueness about your personal experience, in a lot of senses, is not entirely unique. There's a lot of different social and cultural patterns that you can see historically and, let's say, in the scholarship, which all build towards the sort of greater knowledge that anthropology is looking at. Anthropology is a discipline that primarily, not exclusively, is concerned with culture. And culture is a very amorphous term that means very different things to very different people and also very different disciplines. But we will be taking a cultural anthropological approach to a lot of different topics in this class. So bear with me here. Some core course concepts and topics that are very much anthropological are what is a social construct, which we'll get into, and historicism, which we'll also get into. Distinctions between biological sex and gender, because anthropology, like a lot of different disciplines and the greater social body, has come to consider two distinct separate categories: race as a social construct, and also ethnicity, which don't necessarily mean the same thing, but they are also used interchangeably. Now, a key thing here is a social construct. Basically, it's something that we all collectively sort of give weight to, essentially. Race has no biological basis, meaning that genetically there is no difference between you or I, regardless of our skin color. But race has a very real consequence for a lot of different people, which we probably can pull from a lot of different examples of, and we definitely will in this class. This class, additionally, as I mentioned on the previous slide, will have you critically engage with academic literature. Critical doesn't necessarily mean to take in the negative. It's just you really engaging and understanding and digesting the material. That can also include you being critical of the article. As an example, you could just say, when you're doing your reflection papers, I did not like this article for X, Y, and Z reasons. But is that just because that's your opinion on it, or is that something that you feel is wrong with the methodology, for instance, or the underlying assumption that their authors are making that does not, let's say, fit their data? You have to really sit down, digest, and crunch a reading that you may not be used to, and it may make you uncomfortable or may take a lot of time, but that's how you really start to understand what the author is trying to say, and you can really start to engage in a discussion with both your peers, but also the literature, as you're reading different articles and how they're kind of talking to each other, in a sense. That also involves, as you're reading these articles, for instance, a reflection on maybe your own personal biases and positionality. Again, as how you perceive something is based on your life experiences, in a sense. And those life experiences shape your expectations of reality. And reality, basically, in this sense, means how you should expect someone to behave or communities to behave as you are a member of that community, in a sense. And to wrap this course up, based on your understanding of inequalities and multiculturalism, you're going to draft and develop an intervention proposal, basically an applied outcome you would like to see. So let's say you are looking at food insecurity, basically those that don't have readily amounts of access to nutritious food in the community. How can we make sure that they receive food that is, let's say, cost effective or free, culturally relevant, because not every culture values the same kinds of foods and understands even how to cook with certain kinds of foods. You must think about that as you are developing an intervention from an anthropological perspective. And that sort of is the bow that kind of ties this whole class together. It's building on the scaffolding system we've been developing throughout the semester towards this final product, essentially. So in terms of the grading system for this class, I've already went over the intervention proposal, which I want to emphasize I put a lot of weight in. This is the paper that is the end cap of this semester, that I want to make sure that you really get the course concepts. So you will be required to, for instance, pull from academic literature, both either from my class or outside, to sort of frame your perspective and what you would like to do and what kind of applied outcome you would like to develop, which also builds off of the next category, which is your key issue reflection paper. You're going to turn the lens towards yourself and think about a subject that you are very concerned about. I used the example of food insecurity on the previous page, so taking that and expanding upon it, let's say you yourself have experienced being food insecure, or you have a family member or a friend who has, or maybe you're just concerned about the topic because you think it is of great relevance and not enough people are engaging with it. That's just an example. This additionally could deal with, let's say, access to healthcare services for trans individuals or other LGBTQ plus individuals. It could be something in terms of climate change in Tampa Bay and how you think people should be taking a more active role in supporting their environment. Really, it's up to you. It's just, I want you to really think about why it's an issue, why someone should care about it. And that may even result in you finding out that you would like to create an intervention. So the intervention proposal directly follows after the key issue reflection paper. And ideally, they build off of each other. You identify a problem with the key issue paper, and then you find out a potential way, as an example, to address that problem in your intervention proposal. However, they do not need to be on the same topic. I just encourage you to do so. You will not have points taken off if they are not on the same topic. In terms of the documentary assignments, I'm going to assign you, at least at this point in my conceptualization of the assignments, 3 documentaries. You can choose one, and there will be guidelines for this assignment around the time that it is due. And you will watch this documentary, you will take notes as you are watching it, and then you will basically summarize as well as reflect on the documentary. That reflection can be in terms of, did you think the documentary accurately or convincingly conveyed the ideas they were trying to get across to you? Did you like the documentary? Do you think this helps inform your perspective given a certain topic? And these documentaries primarily are dealing with inequalities in terms of race, gender, or sexuality, and primarily from the lens of the United States. I'd like to turn the lens towards ourselves. A lot of anthropology classes have you go to exotic locations, supposedly, and look at the other with a capital O, as we call it in anthropology. However, a lot of scholarship now is turning that perspective towards the cultures that we ourselves belong to. We should not focus so much attention on the other when we have a lot of situations in the United States that also warrant scholarship and attention. And in looking at the other, we often exoticize the other to the detriment of the other, in a sense. So I want to turn that perspective towards us. It could be Tampa, it could be Florida, it could be the United States. Basically what I'm trying to do is to get you to think about the United States as a conglomerate of different cultures as well. America is very different depending on what state you're even looking at or even inside of that same state. the culture of Tampa Bay, Florida is very different from that of, let's say, Miami or Orlando. It's the same sense of looking at different cultures in, let's say, Alaska versus Florida, to take it extreme. So think about something that is of relevance to you when you're looking at your key issue reflection paper and in your intervention proposal. But the documentary is going to be more hyper-focused on specific issues that I think you should take out of this class and be able to have an articulate conversation about and engage in debates on, essentially. And then the more sort of standard sections of this topic in terms of grading, the online quizzes and participation we'll get to in a second. But the interview assignment sort of also builds off of the documentary. Again, this class primarily is assignments building on each other towards a greater whole, ideally, essentially. So with the documentary in mind, you are going to develop a transcript of questions, a questionnaire, that you are going to then interview someone about. Let's say it could be a family member, it could be a stranger, it could be a friend. Taking the example of, let's say, racial inequalities in the United States, you're going to talk to a certain individual and ask them a series of questions, which you can develop on your own. You could use portions of questions that I will provide you to sort of explore this topic and get someone else's understanding and get you experience doing interviews. Interviews are tough, especially when you are trying to get someone to talk that may not even want to talk, or they may feel uncomfortable talking. You have to be able to, in a sense, do a little bit of improv when you're doing an interview. That's an acquired skill, and it makes a lot of individuals very uncomfortable. From my experience, a lot of anthropologists, including myself, are naturally introverted. So you have to find ways to get out of your own comfort zone when you're talking to somebody to really get a lot of good information out of them, while also being ethical. And ethics is another big portion of this class that we'll get into. Basically, this class is structured in a sense where I'm giving you foundational concepts, then I'm showing you more, let's say, advanced anthropological research and scholarship, and then I'm going to start giving you tools to make you a better researcher, in a sense. This is something that you never perfect, including at the PhD level or even at the tenure level. It's an ongoing iterative process of learning and making mistakes. So we'll make a lot of mistakes in here, and you may notice that when you're doing an interview. That's totally fine. It's a learning process. So this is just a sort of crash course, messy way for you to be able to start to develop those skills that will hopefully help you be a better researcher in terms of anthropology, or maybe even another discipline. Let's say if you're in the sociology program or another program entirely. And also it helps you develop critical thinking skills and discussion and debate acumen as you're talking to individuals and sort of getting a sense of their perspective and your perspective and how you can come together towards finding solutions to common problems, or let's just say silence in discussion, or just animosity that is very easy to fall into when you come from different sides of different perspectives. So that was a mouthful. The simple stuff that you all are very familiar with are online quizzes. Again, this class will only have 4 quizzes, which will have due dates on the syllabus you can refer to. They're very short, and they're just to sort of gauge your understanding of course concepts. I think they're pretty straightforward, and the average usually is pretty good as long as you're keeping up with the material. And that's basically it. Now, I have participation and attendance. This looks very different on a totally online class like this one is versus in person. For this class, participation is basically just going to be your reflection papers. Your reflection papers have very specific guidelines which you will see when you go into the modules sections, but they are going to be based on the readings and other material that I assign you. So refer to the syllabus, and unless it says otherwise, you will write a reflection paper on everything I assign you. So that includes readings, that includes documentaries, that includes podcasts. They don't need to be long. On average, from my experience, these are about a paragraph each. They could be longer. There's no maximum essentially, but there is definitely a minimum. So don't give me a few sentences. I just want to make sure that you understand the material, and it's for your own benefit as well, because these will also help you be prepared for the quizzes also too. This is an online class, and I can't really expect you all to not have the notes in front of you, so I'm assuming that the notes are at least on your mind or are readily available when you are taking quizzes. That being said, plagiarism is a big no at USF and hopefully most universities. So any written assignment will go through plagiarism software. So just know that I can see, for instance, if you are copy pasting something from another student or an online source, and quizzes are supposed to be done by yourself. And ideally, you're by yourself anyways because of social distancing, so it shouldn't be a problem. Got it? Fantastic. Given that this class is entirely online, it's probably useful for you to know where to find everything. So I want to refer to you the Modules tab on Canvas. This is primarily the page you are going to be navigating. It goes through week by week your assignments and their due dates. So for instance, reflection paper 1 is due on August 26th, which is pretty soon, so make sure that you address that. And on that note, if you look in the Welcome tab of this module page, you need to introduce yourself for first day attendance. I want to stress that every class requires first day attendance. It's a university requirement. And if we don't log you having done the assignment, we have to drop you from the class. If it was me, I would have more flexibility in this, but it is very important, and I stress that you complete this assignment as soon as possible because it is very messy and requires additional heartache and confusion and frustration with the bureaucracy of USF to try and get re-enrolled in the class once you've been dropped. So it's very short. Just go into that introduce yourself page, write a short little blurb based on the instructions that I provide, and ideally also respond to at least 1 or 2 students so there can be some form of communication in this otherwise pretty faceless online environment. You also can find your syllabus on this Welcome tab, as well as Start Here, which basically is a very short summary, essentially the bullet points of this PowerPoint for you to refer to whenever you need to do that. But so going through this really quickly again, my sidebar is very different from yours because I'm an instructor, so don't be confused or worried that you don't see the same things that I'm seeing or have on the screen here for you. But for week 1 in the modules, you see your first reading, which is Medeiros and Cowell. So this week, I would like you all to read this article. It's not very long, and well, it's not really an article, it's a chapter. So the chapter is not really long, it's very crunchy. You can finish it probably in a quick sitting. And then after you finish that chapter, you will go to the Reflection 1 assignment, which is directly underneath it. That's the general structure here of how this works. And you will write a reflection piece based on that one reading. That's the only thing I'm requiring you to do this week, beyond ideally watching the lectures that I'm providing. And once you do that reflection, I will log you as having basically attended class in a sense in this online environment. And that's about it. Week 2 is we start to get into more readings. So you will have 2 readings. Minor 1956, very old reading, but there's a very specific reason I'm having you read that, which will be Reflection Paper 2. And then Abu Lugod's 2002 piece will be the next reflection paper due on that Wednesday. So generally it's a Monday, Wednesday structure as the class is also structured. So in place of you having to sit down in a live lecture, I'm just having you submit a reflection paper based on the material that I'm assigning for that week on the day that you would be sitting down at a computer in this case. So that's about it. Other tabs that you should be familiar with are the Files tab, which is where you will find all of the readings if you ever needed to download them quickly. as well as other materials that I may have you refer to. So for example, there's going to be a media link in the files page where you will go there to find all of the documentaries, podcasts that I assign throughout the semester. So that's a very important tab to remember. And another one for you is the grades tab. That's the one you probably care the most about. This is where you can see your average for the semester. But just know that for some categories, so for instance, the reflection papers, which translates to attendance, I will drop a few of your lowest grades. This generally means ones that you did not turn in. So your average may be higher than what you're currently seeing. So just keep that in mind. But if you have any questions, always refer to the syllabus, which again you can find in the welcome tab here and also in the files. That's basically your contract with me and my basic course structure and calendar for the entire semester. So if you're ever wanting to look at the due date of a certain assignment, go to the syllabus and just go down through the calendar and the course schedule and find out when things are due so you can plan accordingly and make sure that this class does not conflict with another class or create too much stress for you in a given week, essentially. Again, as I said earlier on in the PowerPoint, if you ever feel like you are overwhelmed or you just need a little extra time, I can be flexible with that. So just communicate with me. Send me an email, message me on Canvas inbox, which is another thing you can find on the left tab. So whenever you need to message a student or me, you can go to the inbox tab on the left and then just type in my name and send me a quick message. If emailing me is easier, feel free to do that. My email is also provided on the syllabus, so use that for whenever you need to reference something, or if you have a question that is pressing and maybe you aren't able to talk to me given, let's just say, that it's last minute. Usually your answers can be found in the syllabus, is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, that's about it in terms of Canvas. One thing that I'm going to try to teach you all is how to also download academic articles and navigate the USF library system, as well as Google Scholar, which is another very common way of finding articles. This is a very useful skill, and given that you are a university student, you have access to a staggering amount of academic articles that many just don't ever realize they have if they come from a discipline that doesn't require you to download these ever, or maybe the professor just gives you them as files like I'm kind of doing in this class too. So I'm not going to force you to learn it, but I'm going to give you skills to be able to do it, especially later on in the semester as we go through the methodology of an anthropologist and what that actually means in scholarship. So, given as this is the most pressing assignment, I want to hammer in that first day attendance is incredibly important for you as a student. This is a university mandatory mandated requirement. I need to make sure that you all basically are real people in a sense. So this is going to be due this week at the very latest Thursday, because I need to input these on early Friday. Every instructor has a different first day attendance assignment. Some will do, like, let's give an example, would be a syllabus quiz. I'm having you basically just introduce yourself on a form. It's very light, very short. You don't need to put a ton of effort into it. Just basically say, hey, my name is Devin Gray, and give a few fun facts about yourself, icebreakers essentially. These are usually pretty cringy, but they are also very useful. So people would say, oh, that's the guy who likes to play chess. That's a random example. I don't know why that came at the top of my head. But additionally, talk about what's your COVID situation like. Are you at home? Do you have any experience with COVID? Are you in a work environment that you feel uncomfortable with because you are required to wear a mask, but customers don't? Like just basically just tell me how you are and what are you doing in the situation. Because additionally, other students ideally are going to read your responses and reply to them. Have fun with it. Have a discussion. Not a requirement, but it is heavily encouraged. As I said in the previous slide, this is a largely faceless online environment for you all, especially for those that maybe are incoming students to the university. So any situation where you all can start to engage with each other and see what everyone else is doing, I think is very useful. And anthropology, again, is a reading, writing, but also a talking discipline. You have to be very good at talking, both in written form and also oral forms. And so it is very useful, and you can even think of chat rooms and discussions as a form of field work, what we call doing research in anthropology. It's great data right now. There's a lot of amazing data that's out there on social media, as an example, on COVID. How are people reacting to COVID, both negatively and positively? How are people coming together? How are people creating new tensions and situations that didn't really manifest in the way that they are currently beforehand? So these are all very interesting, very oftentimes very scary situations, but are also incredibly useful from an anthropological perspective, because we study humans, and human behavior is a part of being human, of course. So another tangent, but basically make sure you do this. I want to stress it. It is incredibly frustrating for a student to have to try and re-enroll themselves in the class once they've been dropped. So do this as soon as possible, at the latest Thursday. Got it? All right, the last slide, I promise. So basically, one last thing I want to make sure that you really understand are the reflection papers, because there are a lot of them. Again, on average, about 2 per week. That being said, this week only has 1 due, Medeiros and Cowell. So if you go to the modules, go to reflection paper 1 in the modules, you will see the general guidelines for reflection papers. There's no specific criteria that I'm looking for in terms of your reflection. A lot of students talk about what they got out of the article, what they thought the article had in terms of a strength or a weakness, or one thing they thought that maybe could be expanded upon, or one thing that maybe made them think about what they could do to maybe address the problem the authors identify, as an example. Again, no specific structure. I'm looking for, on average, about 1 paragraph at a minimum per media or reading. I say media or reading because for the most part you're having to do readings, but I also will sometimes assign you a documentary or a podcast or a YouTube video, for instance, that I also want you to reflect on. So as long as you see something on the left-hand side, a reading or a documentary, assume you have to do a reflection paper on that. For each reflection paper, I will tell you which readings or media it is for. So for instance, on the very first one, it says after reading Medeiros and Cowell. The next one will say after watching the video and also having done the reading, reflect on both. So again, reflect on everything that you are assigned for that specific day. Don't lose easy points because you just didn't realize that it also counted towards documentaries and podcasts. They very much do. Anthropology likes to, again, pull from holistic sources, including documentaries, including podcasts, including newspaper articles, including academic articles, to get a better picture of the human condition, some people call it. And with that being said, anthropology classes try to get at that human condition. So on the right-hand side, you will see the general topic for that week. So this week is split up, which is a little atypical because most weeks are basically a certain topic, and then Wednesday's quote-unquote class is that topic continued. This week is the syllabus day, so essentially whatever Monday would be in person, that's now on this format. And then anthropology and culture, in quotes, for a specific reason we'll get into for Wednesday's lecture. Basically, anthropology is something that I want to make sure that you fully understand what that means and also what kind of scholarship anthropology specifically produces. Anthropology is a very broad discipline, so not to steal from stuff from that lecture, Just know that anthropologists can be forensic scientists, they can be cultural anthropologists that work with non-governmental organizations, they can be medical doctors if they also have a medical degree. In the case of Paul Farmer, a very famous anthropologist. And also they can be archaeologists. Archaeology in the United States is a subset or subdiscipline of anthropology. So we'll get into that as well. But again, this class primarily takes a cultural anthropology lens because we're looking at cross-cultural diversity and inequalities in the United States, which primarily is taken from a perspective of cultural anthropology. So again, in recap, the syllabus is my contract with you. Make sure that you are very familiar with it. If there's anything that I did not engage with here explicitly, it's found on there. If you have any questions, refer to the syllabus or ask me questions via email or Canvas message, and make sure you're keeping up with the due dates. Reflection papers aren't something that you should really stress out over, even though there are a lot of them. Again, you can drop a few of them as per the syllabus when you read it. So don't stress out. If you have another deadline that is more pressing, do that. If you, for instance, didn't have time to write a reflection paper, but you still want to get some points, just give me something. Just say, hey, I'm sorry this is so short, but I had an external reason that limited my ability to do this week. I generally will give you either time to resubmit it or to get partial credit on it, essentially. So just don't give me blank. I'm trying to, again, be flexible. And I was also flexible when I was teaching this class in person, but given the circumstances we find ourselves in, I think, again, we all should be a little bit more flexible than we probably normally would be in a quote-unquote more normal reality, essentially, for now. So I think you all will really enjoy the class, hopefully a lot more than this, again, very dry, boring PowerPoint that I tried to keep short. So it's not an entire class period, but it still is longer than probably you all had hoped for a syllabus day presentation. And I look forward to reading your work throughout the semester. See you later.